beautiful people. I'm back. Did you miss me? I missed being here, honestly. It's been 2 weeks, and I know I say that I want to record every week, and I'll get there. Past 2 weeks have just been very, very, very eventful, so just catching up and prioritizing rest, which is probably, it'll come up again later as I get into today's topic, but beverage of the day is water, and I'm almost done because it's hot and I just want to be hydrated today. So cheers. My favorite part about water is when I see the whatever it's called, the water driplets on the bottle. That lets me know the water is going to be good and crisp. So anyway, I will be talking about how I learned to manage my emotions. How much time do you all have? Because where do I even begin? I just remember before I learned to manage my emotions, I was an emotional wreck. Because one thing about me is that I was never afraid to cry. I was even called a crybaby in high school because everyone knew that I was going to be crying about something. The difference is I cry less, and when I do, it's not over the same things. It's not over things that don't matter to me and unnecessary stress, because before it was all unnecessary stress that was causing myself, and truthfully I just didn't know any better. Like I said, I was in high school when I was called a crybaby, and what do we know in high school? Nothing. Sorry if no one told you that. If you are in high school now, you don't have it all together, and you never will have it all together. That's just life. But at some point, we all need to talk to that high schooler that's in us and that younger child that is in us and tell them, you just don't have it all together. You just did not know any better. That is how you can extend compassion and grace toward yourself, because you were trying to get it right with what you knew as best as you could, and you had to learn, just like me. So when I officially learned to manage my emotions, or when I learned how important it is to manage my emotions, it wasn't until I was 25 and in grad school, beginning grad school as a therapist, and of course, right, I became a therapist, and I went into the program expecting to help everybody else. What I did not know is that I would be helping myself and facing my issues. If you are a therapist, you know self of the therapist's work is priority, because clients are going to bring up things that activate emotions in us. It'll remind us of past wounds and experiences that were painful, and we as therapists are expected to manage our emotions in the room and to deal with those emotions effectively and appropriately. Not that we can't show emotions in sessions, however, there's a way to do it where we are not making a mess of ourselves. And my 2 year experience of grad school, I always say I thought it was for me to learn to help other people, but that was the experience that was really for me that I did not know, especially because the second year of, or within the first year, because after the first semester ended, we went right into the pandemic and everything was virtual for me. Classes, my internship, and seeing clients, everything from that period was virtual. So that was a blessing in disguise for me because I'm learning to adjust to the changes of the world while also adjusting to life before that, and discovering who I am and where I'm trying to go. Now, I also will add that right before, maybe a year ish before grad school, I started my personal therapy, and definitely necessary. That I was in and out of therapy before grad school, but at least starting that journey was helpful, and it was challenging as well because my therapist encouraged me to be honest and face some hard truths. Now, I always say grad school was therapy for me. I could say free therapy, but not really because I paid to go to grad school. But I always say free because it was, or rather, it was, it just happened. It was very natural support. My classmates, shout out to them, great. All 16 of them. We had a very small cohort. So we were very close. We were very compassionate toward each other while keeping each other accountable, and they just showed a lot of grace to me, which I appreciated, and allowed me to show up and cry it out, and also encouraged me to take up space because that was something I did not have permission to do before. So it was nice that they actually cared enough to say, hey, cry it out. We want to hear more. I even had a few classmates say, wow, I think it's great that you can cry because I actually don't allow myself to cry. I don't know how to access that. So that was great feedback to hear. And I also had great supervisors along the way that asked those hard questions. And one thing about me is I love doing emotional work personally because I love growing. I love growing mentally and emotionally and spiritually. And so when I can ask myself those hard questions and figure out what blocks are in my life, I like to tackle those areas so that I can get to the next stage and apply what I've learned. I love doing the work. So that's one thing that supervision encouraged me to do, is to face those blocks that were hindering me from growing. Now, on top of being in grad school, I was also in a relationship at that time, and I was determined to make it work. And my boyfriend at the time was telling me some hard truths about myself, and I say, you know what? He's right. What I'm doing is harmful to the relationship, to myself. I don't want that for myself. I don't want that for the relationship because I want to grow. And I started applying the work more and more. And I wish I could say it was like this is all you need to do and this is how you get emotional management. No. All I can say is that I just cared enough to want to do the work. And so maybe that's the one thing that you need to get to the emotional management is to care enough to pay attention to yourself, pay attention to the people around you, the feedback they're giving you. Make sure it's trusted advice and feedback because, of course, there are other people that don't care about you, don't want to see you grow. And luckily, as I said, my classmates were the people that I could trust, and we were all doing it together, which made me look forward to it. So, what made me care enough was, and I've said this in other videos, in December of 2020, I had a wake up call, and I remember the day vividly. If you've heard the story before, you're going to hear it again. Just to recap, I was coming home from boyfriend's house I just mentioned and got into a big fight, and I was under the influence of marijuana. Not a good time to be driving home, but I did anyway, and I was also crying. Oh my God, I was crying. There we go again, crying, emotional wreck. I blinked and it felt like I spaced out, and all of a sudden I just said, let me go to a gas station, pull over, collect myself. And luckily nothing bad happened because I was at a turning light and getting ready to turn left, and I was aware enough to know that cars were coming, so I didn't almost crash. But for some reason, as I blinked, it just felt so powerful that it was enough for me to say, whoa, I need to regroup. And then I drove home, and that was a day that, or the following day, I was redoing my hair. I had my sister locks at the time. And if you know, that is an hour process, maybe about 5 hours plus. And I was a newbie at the time of retwisting. So anyway, had my songs playing in the background. Erykah Badu, I listened to every album of hers from the beginning to the end. From the first album release to the last mixtape that she released. Every single thing. And from listening to her music and actually paying attention to the words, I felt seen and encouraged and inspired. And I just said, wow. So I've been stressing about unnecessary things and people that don't matter. And my heart is just so broken and I need to heal. And then I said, wait a minute. I actually know who I am. I know my worth and I'm strong and I am better than what people have tried to label me as. All the negative things and what they say about me isn't true. It doesn't describe me completely. And then I realized that there are parts of me that didn't have it all together. And I realized that there is a choice, that I have control. And once I realized that I have control, that's when the switch went off. And from that period, I've gotten better with maintaining my control. And another therapist at the time, the last one that I was actually seeing, maybe a year later from that day, I remember she gave me a homework assignment to list all the things I can't control. And I thought it was going to be a list of hundreds of things, but it was only five. I remember it being what people do and think about me. I probably grouped those together. I remember including animals because I was taking care of a dog at the time, and I quickly learned that dogs are just going to do whatever they want to do, and I have no control. And I remember time being on the list, and I can't remember the rest, but it was very short. And I realized that there is a small list of things that I can't control, and there is a much bigger list of things that I can control. And that was liberating for me because it allowed me to become responsible for my actions, to not place blame on other people because other people did not make me react the way I did. I chose to. No one forced me to date certain people and to befriend certain people. I chose all of those things. When people have lost my trust and betrayed me, I chose to give them second chances. No one forced me to. And when I began to use that language, I realized how much control I actually have. And then I said, well, great, because I don't have to go back to those people. I don't have to do those things anymore. I will choose differently. Speaking of choice, I remember I had a bulletin board on my wall, and I wrote, I choose to be happy. And that's an example of the work I also began to do because in order to break habits, I believe we have to surround ourselves with reminders until we begin to naturally pick up the habits that we want. So I had the bulletin board, I changed my wallpaper. As I said, my classmates became great friends as well, so I spent more time with them. Social media, I did a lot of cleaning on who I was following, and at one point, I completely got off of social media altogether. And I just began to fill my environment with what serves me. Even on my laptop, I had one post-it note that said slow down in all caps because I did not want to rush the process at meeting with clients, and I just knew I had to slow down to gather information, to listen and hear them so that I can support them better. And I had another post-it note on the other side of my laptop that said, you rock. So there's one piece of advice, and then the other one was encouraging words of affirmation of, yes, you're awesome. And all of those things grouped together, the music I was listening to, I just realized that I needed to step up and become an adult. Yes, so again, even at 25, I was starting to realize I did not have it all together. Oh, I was lying to myself all that time. Can you see how long I was lying to myself? So if you are under 25, please, 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 please be encouraged by what I'm saying because we always say if I knew then what I know now, I would have been unstoppable. No one could have told me anything. So now that I do know this information and I'm applying it, I'm truly unstoppable now because moving forward is all I'm focused on, and I want to do it the right way with the right skills and the right mindset. And doing it now because people often say things happen overnight or nothing can happen overnight. Well, for me it did, because when I say it was a switch, it was a complete switch. And from that day that I chose to change, I did it. And as I began to take better control of my actions and my emotions, things did not bother me as much. I used to be very, 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 very defensive, taking everything personally. And from that point forward, my response, instead of being defensive and trying to prove people wrong, I shifted to, okay, if that's what you think, I cannot change your mind. I understand why you would think that. And if there's anything I can do to help you, let me know. Out of my hands at that point. And that felt so good because that, instead of putting it all on me and me having to do all the work, meant that the other person is now expected to do the work and telling me what I can do for them. And that's a specific example from that relationship I was in, because that was a person that called me selfish, and just everything I was doing just got on his last nerve, and just said, okay, I understand where you're coming from. I disagree, etc., etc. Instead of fighting and instead of being aggressive, and it's like, I just don't care. I don't have time to fight. I don't want to spend my time fighting. And I'm going to give you what you want. And that became easier because it wasn't always easy before. And the more I think about listening to people and what they're asking for, and in that specific example I'm thinking about, where at that time he was asking for space, no contact. And I said, okay, I can give you that. And that is also me saying I have a choice, because it got to a point where he did not ask for space and I got tired of waiting. And so I said, you know what? I'm ending this. I'm not tolerating this anymore. As hard as that was, it also felt great because I realized that there's some things that I'm not tolerating, and I don't deserve to go through that. And when it comes to relationships, I think a lot of people need to know that they have a choice. You don't have to tolerate everything that is presented to you. You can choose to accept the terms or not, and negotiate. And I will say, from that example, when I told my ex that I wanted to break up, he agreed and then came back and said, actually, I don't want this to be the end. And so, by giving him another chance, I said, I understand that you have some things to work on, and I will not tolerate this. So we need to be doing the work to make sure this doesn't happen again. And he's an ex for a reason. Why? Because we could not do the work together. That's all. And that is important, because you won't agree on everything in relationships with friends, family, your spouse. You won't agree. There's some things you can tolerate. There's some things you aren't willing to accept. When it's time to agree, you need to negotiate. Figure out what works best. If you cannot negotiate, if you cannot find a compromise to meet in the middle, you have to decide if that works for you or not. Sometimes it will, sometimes you won't care to meet in the middle, but there will be times where you need to meet in the middle, and if you can't, you have to work through that. That's what makes relationships work. So, as hard as that was, I felt liberated with the official ending of that relationship because I realized that was someone I did not want to be with, and his choice. I will never try to take credit for that because at the time, I was someone that wanted to fight for relationships until the wheels fell off. And that wasn't a relationship worth fighting for. So I'm very grateful that he made the choice to end it. And after that ending, I really looked at everything and just say, you know what? I am okay without this relationship because it was not serving me. And I don't want someone that isn't sure about me. And I began to invest my time in the things that matter to me. And that's how I got here, in a much better relationship, much better environment. And like I said, I've just been able to continue to grow. And I say all that to say, because I learned to manage my emotions, I also knew when to stop fighting. I knew when fighting for that relationship wasn't worth it anymore. And when it comes to emotions, we have to realize that sometimes we are telling ourselves a story. We are lying to ourselves because of how we feel. That's where logic comes in. And when you are using wisdom and telling yourself what's right, what makes sense, you have to repeat that, because the more you tell yourself that, you will follow that wisdom, especially when what you're telling yourself as you're emotional, if it goes against your character, you wouldn't want to do that anyway. So just as an example, I'm thinking about when my ex would ask for space, and instead of giving him that, I would just chase and try to get him to talk to me and engage so we can work it out in the moment. Now, that's not right because he's trying to set a boundary and I wasn't agreeing with it. I was disrespecting that space that he needed. And so, if my emotional brain is telling me, keep trying to engage him, keep trying to talk with him, that logical side is going to say no, because he wants space. Honor that request, and if not, these are the consequences. And there are so many examples. I'm sure you can apply that same reasoning to, and maybe think of some personal experiences for yourself. But that's what I mean by learning to manage your emotions, is paying attention to how you feel when you're sad, when you're angry, when you're crying. There are things you're telling yourself that you may want to do. That is how people lead into self-harm, not just physical wounds of self-harm, not just with drugs and alcohol, but there are a lot of things that people do to self-harm. Pay attention to what you're telling yourself. And if you are being told to do something in the heat of the moment that is adding more harm, that is where you have to take control and fight back to say, no, I'm not doing that. That doesn't serve me. That's only going to make things worse. And that is where caring has to come in, because it's going to be hard. It is going to be very hard. It's hard. Some days are harder, and some moments rather are harder than others, because we still have to do the work for the rest of our lives. And if we're alive long, God willing, that's going to be a lot of work. Imagine living till you're 95 and 160 and 1,000 years old. As long as you are alive, you are expected to manage those emotions every single day, every moment. You know how many encounters you have, how many opportunities you have to manage your emotions? I know it does not sound good. However, when you see the evidence and how important it is to manage your emotions, and when you see that it works, you are going to choose it because it is beneficial. It's like when something tastes really good, you make a great recipe and it tastes good. You're likely going to keep making that recipe because it tastes good, and you want to feel good. You want to taste something that is really good. Apply that to anything else. Working out, doing your hair a certain way, whatever it is. When things work, we want them more. We enjoy them. We just want it. The same thing applies to the emotional and mental work. So, if you care enough, seek help, especially because, as I said, I had no problem being vulnerable, but it was always to a degree, because there were certain people before grad school. I just always had a guard up, and I was afraid to let people in. But with my classmates and just being in a setting with other aspiring therapists, that was just an environment where we were all expected to let those walls down, because we were having hard conversations, and I knew that they cared, because not only did they ask me what was wrong, they also followed up with encouragement and, like I said, compassion. So it was just a great experience, because people put walls up when they're met with criticism, harsh criticism, and judgment and shame, and people that are not compassionate, people that are dismissive. And so, because I got the opposite, people that were very encouraging and encouraging me to face myself, I wanted to grow even more. And so, if you don't have that, though, that circle around you, I truly pray that you find that, and God will bring those people to you. Just ask him to, and wait patiently, because I did not know that that was coming in grad school. I truthfully did not ask for that circle, because like I said, I thought I had it all together. But I was open to the experience. And that's another thing, is God is trying to provide for you, but you have to let him. You have to be open, because His packages will come in different shapes and sizes. And if you turn your nose up to something that is meant for you, you are missing out. So don't be afraid of what God is bringing you, because if He's bringing you someone that cares and wants to know you, but they look differently than you expected, just focus on their character. Because if the desire is to be surrounded with love, you're not going to care too much what the who's the giver of love. It's just the fact that they're giving love is going to be so amazing. And with that, having a circle helps. And I emphasize caring so much because the people I was surrounded with could not do the work for me. So, you know what pride does? Pride influences us to prove people wrong. That when that ego is involved, it says, I will show you. You're doubting me? Okay, just watch. Don't believe me, just watch. But that was the mindset that I had, is that I did not want to be wrong. And I wanted to show the world that I was growing, especially the guy I was dating at the time, with all the names that he would call me. I wanted to prove him wrong and say, actually, I'm doing the work now, and look at the results. You see, at first, I wasn't giving you space, but now I am. And at first, you would say I would do this, and now look at me. And it never worked, for him at least, but it worked for me. That's another thing that helped me, is that I had to realize that doing the work is for myself first and foremost, because it's my life to live, and I should be willing to change for me, because there is a very tiny little girl inside of me that needs love and support and care. And I want to make her proud. So I started with that intention of, whatever people say and think about me, I'm going to do this work for myself. And if they like it, awesome. If they don't, well, they don't have to, because it's enough for me. And the people that God has for me will be on board with the changes I'm making. And that's all I care about. Yes, losing people may hurt. It sucks. Growing doesn't always feel good. And it is worth it. It is worth it. I promise you it's worth it. And if you don't believe me now, you will. If you pay attention and apply what I'm saying, you will believe me. And you don't have to thank me later. Just thank the Lord, because that's all it's about, is giving all honor, praise, and glory right back to Him, because I did not do this work alone. I needed His help, and I still do. I needed His help even when I didn't know. And now that I know, you best believe I am taking full advantage of all the help and love that He is giving me. And there's enough to go around. That's the beautiful thing about the Lord. There's enough love to go around. So that will likely conclude. Oh, and I know I mentioned in the beginning of getting rest, and I think the emotional work is part of that. Get some rest, because when we are an emotional wreck, I'll keep it to me personally. I always wanted to keep busy. I always wanted to push through the pain and keep fighting and keep going to prove that I'm strong and that I'm capable. And in order to demonstrate my strengths, I have to not only build a tolerance, but there's a recovery period that is necessary. Same with exercising. Recovery matters. If we did not need sleep, God would not give us the ability to go to sleep. So clearly, we need sleep for a reason. Take advantage of getting rest, even if it's just sitting on the couch, laying down for a bit, closing your eyes, or just something that allows you to be still. That is necessary. So, and there are those times where instead of being a busybody, I just needed to cry and stare at the wall, or maybe go for a walk, or take a nap. And then I felt better. I felt recharged, and that gave me energy to keep fighting. So, that's what I've been trying to prioritize. I won't say trying. Or the reason I said trying is because my sleep has not been the best the past few weeks. However, I've been resting in different areas, but I'm trying to become more consistent with a sleep regimen. And I know it won't be perfect, but just a little bit more consistency because I've been all over the place. But with all the energy I have, my desire is to still invest in this platform and continue to share what God lays on my heart and my tongue to share with you all. And my goal is to be more consistent. That's why I say all this. So we'll see what happens. I'm going to be intentional about being consistent and posting and uploading new videos. But that is all from me for today on this lovely sunny day. Stay hydrated. Be encouraged. Love yourself. Love others. And homework for you all. When I say love yourself, truly look at how you spend your time, how you invest in yourself. If it is not love, time for a change. Reevaluate. And I know love is thrown around all the time and people are confused. And love is growth. Love won't always feel good, but it leads to growth. So, don't be confused. There's something that you're going through right now that is very painful, and you may be trying to escape it because it's painful, but it may be necessary versus something else that may be painful and not helping you grow. You should know the difference. You should be honest with yourself. And whatever is not helping you grow, time to reevaluate because that's not the love. That's not love, and that's not what you want. So, when I say love yourselves and love others, I truly mean that. Pay attention to how you treat others. Is it helping them grow? Is it with good intentions and wanting to support people? If not, stay in the house alone. Stay away from people. If you are out to cause harm and to hurt people, just stay away. Take a bath, take a nap, and start again. When you are in a position to love yourself and love others, spread that. Until then, just don't. Don't go out there ruining people's day and hurting their feelings just because you have nothing better to do. That's what you tell yourself. You have something better to do with your time than to go around causing ruckuses. So I'm done yelling. But with love, of course, with love, I pray that you all are encouraged. And I pray that this video is insightful enough for you to learn how to take control of your emotions and just to close out with some examples of what's helpful for me. As I said, to break some habits and some behaviors I like to implement. For me, it all starts in the mental because I had a history of easily panicking in the heat of the moment and overthinking about what could go wrong. And so the first thing I like to tell myself is don't panic. It'll be okay. Just some positive affirmations that really help me, and reminding myself to just breathe and don't panic and to relax. Focusing on those mental thoughts really help me. And from there, I focus on what else I can do that will help me relax. What do I have the energy for? And like I said, sometimes that's sitting down, sometimes that's taking a shower, going for a walk, reading, whatever. So there is no one size fits all. It's really just having the awareness of your emotions so that you can then manage them. Because you won't know how to manage them if you're not aware. And where people lose themselves often is that they're on autopilot so much that it's just a snap. You go from 0 to 10 in a matter of seconds. So pay attention to the information you're taking in, because there is something that you hear or you see that leads to that snap reaction. So what caused you to get angry? Pay attention to that. What's making you feel like you want to snap and start fighting and being destructive? Pay attention to that. When you pay attention to the information you're receiving, you will have to slow down enough to assess the situation and how to best respond. Because what happens is people have those snap reactions because maybe they feel like they're in danger, and there's that quick response where that's why defensiveness is so common, because people want to defend themselves, they want to protect themselves. And there's nothing wrong with wanting to defend yourself, but not every situation calls for that. So you have to know. And of course, feel your feelings, anger, sadness, that's not bad. How we handle those feelings, how we respond to those feelings, is what determines if our action is productive or harmful. So that is how slow you have to be. That is how careful you have to be. Before you act, you have to first evaluate the situation. And what's helped me personally, rather than being defensive, I like to ask questions. I like to understand what people mean and where their thought process is, where their opinions are coming from. Because being called selfish, being called mean, and all these things, not always easy to hear. And so instead of taking that on and internalizing it, and instead of saying, no, I'm not, that's not true, it's like, okay, It's not about whether it's true, it's not about whether the person is right or wrong, but the fact that someone has something to say, explore where that's coming from. Why do you think this? Why do you say that? And then you can determine what the appropriate response following that can be. Because not everything is a fight. Not everything is worth arguing for and getting worked up about. Because when you are sure about yourself, you won't be easily swayed by other people's opinions of you. And like I said, you will learn the difference in when someone wants to help you and when they're being hurtful. Especially if someone is calling you a name and they have nothing to back it up with. So, that's something that really helps me, is to just slow down and ask questions, because we all hear things differently than the person intended to say. And so it's best to just ask questions, make sure you understand what they're saying, where they're coming from. And if you two are on the same page, that's how you can communicate together. Otherwise, we see all the time people are not on the same page, and that's why they're clashing, because they don't understand each other. So, know the difference in life and death situations. It doesn't have to just be life or death. There's an in between that we can chill out a little bit. So, that's really all this time. That's all for now. I appreciate you all for tuning in, and subscribe if you haven't already. Like and turn on notifications so that you can see when I upload again. Share with whoever needs to hear this, and until next time, peace out.